there, it's Mandy from Mandy Marie Art. It's time for another Copic Ink refill swatch video. In this video, I'm going to swatch half of my collection of red violet inks from Copic Ink. So let's dig in. All right, first up is RV32, which is Shadow Pink. And Shadow Pink is a pretty stable color. There's a little bit of a yellow beigey undertone to it, but not too much. It's very, very subtle. I don't think it really would stand out when using the color. There's not a lot of texture or gumminess to it, and it doesn't stain the paper initially when you drop the color down. Next color is RV34, which is dark pink. And it's a very nice pink color, very stable, no undertones, so there's nothing bleeding out. It doesn't stain the paper with the initial drop, and it's not very gummy, and it doesn't have a lot of texture, but you could get some buildup a little bit along the edges. The next color, which is a color I happen to use quite a bit, is RV42, which is salmon pink. Again, really stable salmon color, a little bit of yellowing along the edges. There's a lot more orange to this considering it's a red-violet color. But again, it's just a really stable color, just a little bit of beige yellowing along the edges. Next, we have RV52, which is cotton candy. And again, another stable color. Not a lot of undertones. Really, there's maybe some subtle violet that'll happen along the edges, but it's very, very light. It's not super tacky or gummy. Again, maybe being able to build up the texture a little bit along the edges, but for the most part, it's just a really stable color. Next, we have RV55, which is Hollyhock. And with this color, there's no undertones that are present when you use it, so nothing bleeding out. It's not very tacky or gummy, and again, it's just a stable red violet. Next is RV63, which is Begonia, and Begonia has a bit of staining on the paper. That's more of that bluish violet hue. You can hardly see it, but it's there. Especially where the ink was initially laid down, where it's darker here. Not so much around the edges, so it's not a true halo, it's just a blue staining that happens underneath. It's not a texture buildup kind of color, there's no gumminess to it, so it's pretty stable in that regard. Next is RV66, which is Raspberry, and there's some purpley blue, like kind of staining to the paper underneath, but this color is so dark that it covers up that staining. But initially there is some blue staining on that paper. Because it is a darker color, you could definitely build up the texture along the edges. No other halos or undertones present there though. Next is RV69, which is Peony, and it is just a really great rich color, just like the peonies that grow at my house. Very just warm red in there. There is an initial staining on the paper, but again, this color is so dark you can't even see that blue staining. No halos. And again, it's a darker color, so you could easily build up texture along the edges if you wanted to. Next, we have RV91, which is Grayish Cherry, and very stable color. No real like undertones or bleeding. There wasn't any staining on the paper from the initial drop, but because this is a lighter color, it can get rather gummy, and so you'll see some gummy texture in here, so keep that in mind. Next is RV93, which is Smoky Purple. And this one is another one of those colors that will stain the paper blue underneath. So underneath that ink, and you can't see it, it's a very subtle blue. It's a very light blue, but it's there. And then again, because this is a lighter color, it is rather gummy around the edges. So some texture there. Next is RV95, which is Baby Blossoms. And again, this one does stain the paper. It's got some of that bluish undertone to it, but it's not really anything that bleeds out onto the paper. It's just a staining of the paper underneath. And this color is also kind of gummy and dries a little more interestingly than some of the other colors. And that sometimes happens when the colors are a little bit more dull or there's some more gray to it. You'll see that they kind of respond or behave a little differently. And then finally, there's RV69, which is Argyle Purple. And this definitely stains the paper blue. There's a lot of blue undertones to it, so you definitely see that when you're using it, so keep that in mind. Again, it's a darker color, so this one can build up texture really well. But you'll, like I said, lots of blue undertones, lots of blue bleeding out, and then even some red around the edges too.
All right, one last look at my personal collection of inks in the Red Violet range from Copic Ink. Again, this is only half of the red violets, so watch part 1 to see the other half. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about alcohol ink, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below and you'll be notified the second I upload a new video. That's it from me. Let's meet up again.